What was the worst thing your parents ever did to you? I was 8 years old, sitting at the kitchen table doing homework when my mom suddenly grabbed her chest. She made this weird gasping sound I'd never heard before. I looked up just as she collapsed to the linoleum floor. Her body hit with a sickening thud that I can still hear today. I screamed for my dad, who came running from the garage, grease still on his hands from fixing the lawnmower. I'd never seen my dad scared before. "Call 911!" he yelled as he dropped to his knees beside her. His voice cracked when he shouted at me again. My hands shook so violently I could barely hold the phone. I messed up the numbers twice, had to hang up and start over while my mom lay there not moving. Her face was turning this awful gray color. The operator kept asking questions I didn't know how to answer. Is she breathing? I couldn't tell. Does she have a pulse? I didn't even know what that meant. Dad was doing chest compressions like on TV, but nothing looked right. Her body just bounced up and down like a broken doll. I kept waiting for her eyes to open, for her to sit up and laugh like it was all some terrible joke. The ambulance sirens seemed to take forever. I ran to the window every few seconds, watching for flashing lights. Neighbors started gathering on their porches, whispering and pointing at our house. When the paramedics finally burst through our front door, they pushed me out of the way. Big men with equipment and urgent voices crowding around my mom. They hooked up wires and machines, pumped air into her lungs with a plastic bag. "We're losing her," one of them said. I didn't understand what that meant, but the way Dad's face went white told me everything. They loaded her onto a stretcher, rolling fast toward the ambulance. Dad grabbed my arm and pulled me along. I was still wearing my pajamas and slippers, running across the wet grass to keep up. At the hospital, they rushed her through doors I wasn't allowed to follow. Dad and I sat in those hard plastic chairs that squeaked every time you moved. The waiting room smelled like disinfectant and coffee that had been sitting too long. I kept asking if Mom was okay, but Dad just stared at the TV mounted on the wall. His leg bounced up and down. He bit his nails until they bled. Other families came and went, some crying, some celebrating. I watched a little girl run into her grandfather's arms while we just sat there in silence. Hours passed. I fell asleep against Dad's shoulder and woke up when a doctor in scrubs approached us. He looked exhausted. The doctor sat down next to my dad and started talking in this quiet, careful voice. I caught fragments. Massive heart attack, and did everything we could, and so very sorry. Dad's shoulders started shaking. I'd never seen him cry before, not even when Grandpa died last year. That's when my dad turned to me with red, swollen eyes. He took my small hands in his rough, calloused ones. His wedding ring felt cold against my palm. "Your mom is gone, buddy, but she wanted me to tell you something important before she died." The words hit me like ice water. I was crying so hard I could barely catch my breath. Snot ran down my face and I wiped it on my sleeve. "What did she say?" Dad looked me straight in the eyes, his voice steady and cruel. "She said it's all your fault. If you hadn't been such a bad kid, this never would have happened. The stress of dealing with you is what killed her." I believed him. For 3 years, I carried that guilt. I stopped talking to friends. I barely ate. I had nightmares every single night. Then one day when I was 11, I overheard Dad on the phone with my aunt. He was laughing about something and I heard him say, "Yeah," telling him it was his fault really messed with his head. Kid's been a perfect angel ever since. My mom never said those words. She died instantly. But my dad wanted a quiet, obedient child, so he used my grief as a weapon against me.